There's an interesting column there by Michael McDowell in the Irish Times there the other day. Michael McDowell is a senior counsel. He's an Irish Times columnist. He is a senator in the Irish Seanad, and he's a former Minister for Justice, and I think he may be a former leader of the Progressive Democrats political party. He has a column there last week in the Irish Times. The heading is "Trump voters are shameful betrayers of the ideals and ambitions of democracy." He basically argues that Trump is a repugnant embodiment of all that is worst in America and all that is most dangerous to democracy in the world. He goes on to say that we all know that Trump did his level best to prevent the result of the 2020 election, which he clearly lost, from being carried into effect. The bill of indictment now, the indictment that he's facing, a trial by jury in Washington DC, sets out in clarity and forcefulness precisely how he sought to outline or how determine the outcome of that election in a nefarious, unlawful way. That's the allegation. The evidence of put before the grand jury, which has issued or has resulted in the indictment, sets out the serious counts of criminal conspiracy and fraudulent attempts to reverse the outcome of the election. Trump is saying that he's being persecuted rather than being prosecuted. His allies claim that the choice of venue, Washington DC, has been chosen to take unfair advantage of its overwhelmingly democratic demographic. That particular complaint, according to McDowell, is baseless. The accounts in the indictment demonstrate that he choreographed the conspirators from the White House. It was from there that he urged Mike Pence to reject the slates of electors chosen in accordance with state and federal law. It was from Washington that he urged Georgia's Secretary of State to find sufficient votes to carry the election in that state. It was in Washington that his plan to file bogus challenges to individual state results was coordinated. It was from there that he drove his lying deception to Stop the Steal campaign. Therefore, Washington DC is the appropriate venue for this indictment. It was in Washington also that Trump and his cronies coordinated a campaign to create alternative lists of slate or state electors in the hope that Republican state legislatures could create doubt over the validity of the true electors. It was in Washington on January 6, 2021, that he spoke to a crowd which had assembled, telling them they now had to fight to stop the steal, dishonestly telling them that he was going to join them at the Capitol. Of course he didn't. The indictment does not allege that he incited them to invade the Capitol itself. He was careful to throw in the vacuous suggestion that he should act peacefully, or they should act peacefully, for deniability's sake. But it's also unclear how they could possibly fight to stop the steal, as he suggested, by other means which did not involve Congress's abandonment of the electoral certification process mandated by law. The shame of it all now, according to McDowell, lies individually with all those Americans, each and every one of them, who ignore or refuse to believe the obvious fact that Trump did his utmost to fraudulently steal the election for himself by a concerted attempt to subvert and frustrate the role of the US Constitution and the law. McDowell goes on to argue that Americans who want to put him back into the White House are shameful betrayers of the ideals and ambitions of the spirit of democracy and constitutionalism which underlies its history and greatness. He is, according to McDowell, a repugnant embodiment of all that is worst in America and all that is most dangerous to democracy in the world. He also refers to Trump using the term nasty to attack women, for example, Hillary Clinton, Meghan Markle, Nancy Pelosi and Kamala Harris, who get in his way. The Danish Prime Minister, Danish Premier Mette Frederiksen, had described his idea that the US would buy Greenland from the Danes as absurd. Her refusal was dubbed nasty by a miffed Trump. He railed that he would not allow her to deal with the US presidency in the way they treated us under Obama, and then petulantly cancelled an arranged state visit to Denmark. He's also railed against the DA in Georgia, I think Fannie Willis is her name, and has made misogynist and racist remarks about her. We also see the spectacle now of the judge in the Washington DC indictment against him needing extra security. There's extra security provided for that particular judge, who happens to be A, black, and B, a woman. McDowell goes on to contrast that with how he dealt with Kim Jong-un, the North Korean tyrant, when his own insults about the little rocket man and his saber-rattling achieved absolutely nothing. Trump arranged a summit where he lavished praise on Kim. Again, he fell flat on his face. The North Korean threat to the US was permitted to continue, to the point that its intercontinental ballistic nuclear missiles now threaten American cities, bases, and those of allied United States. McDowell says those of us in Europe should never forget his concerted attempts to damage and fragment the EU. He strongly encouraged European politicians who proposed quitting the Union. We in Ireland should ask whether a Trump presidency would have pushed the UK to resolve its Brexit difficulties along the lines of the Northern Ireland Protocol and the Windsor Accord. Is there something dark in the American psyche that accounts for the level of suspicion, fear, gullibility and hostility that could lead a great number of Americans to wish to re-elect Trump? One way or another, according to McDowell, he's a very dangerous and yes, nasty man. McDowell doesn't deal with the question of Trump's sexual deviancy. Trump's sexual deviancy, of course, has to do with for example, the Jean Carroll allegation, where the judge in that particular case said that the allegation that Trump raped that woman is substantially true. And Trump lost that case. It was found that he had sexually harassed, or sexually abused rather, the columnist. That was the finding of the jury in that particular case. The jury found that Trump sexually abused the columnist E. Jean Carroll and awarded €3 million, awarded $5 million in compensatory and punitive damages. About $2 million on the sexual abuse count and close to $3 million for defamation for branding her a liar. So Trump did the usual thing of insulting and name-calling and so on, the childish way he goes on, and called her a liar for making the allegation. Not only did she carry her allegation, not only did the jury find in her favour, but the jury awarded her $2 million for the sexual abuse that they decided she had suffered at the hands of Trump, and awarded $3 million for defamation. This, of course, McDowell in his column doesn't make any reference either to the absolutely appalling comments of Trump about grabbing, during the last election campaign in America, about grabbing women by the private parts and how they enjoyed it and so forth. If that's not sexual deviancy, if that's not abhorrent, odious behaviour, well then, in the mind of any right-thinking person, it's hard to see what is actually odious or completely inappropriate. So there you have it. McDowell did a good job there in his column, setting out what he believes is a betrayal of the ideals of democracy and so forth by followers and supporters of Trump. And even in his column, which was excoriating, he left out the whole question of Trump's sexual deviancy. Hope you find this video useful or noteworthy, or you might be interested in commenting down below. If you do, leave the comments in the doobly-doo down below. Thanks a lot.